Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'm here with Abu Usama, the Imam of Green Lane Masjid, to ask him a few questions about the Dispatches Channel 4 documentary, which has accused him of making inappropriate and derogatory statements. We're here today to allow Brother Usama to give his views on the program and its content. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Okay, it's been said that you stated that women are deficient in their intellect. Are you not encouraging discrimination against women?
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Amma ba'. First of all, I think it's important for us to understand that in the accusations that the newspapers and this Dispatches program are making, that there are different types of statements that were made. There are certain statements that were made by different people which were the truth because they were ayats of the Quran or they were a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those statements we embrace. And then there were statements that were made by people that were incorrect. Some of them were ludicrous even. They went against al-Islam. We free ourselves from those statements. And then there are those statements that were taken out of context. People made the statements, but they were taken out of context. So as Muslims, we have to be intellectual and we have to be academic in dealing with these issues. We don't embrace everything that was said by the different speakers, nor do we reject everything that was said by the different speakers. And simply because there are non-Muslims who are making an attempt to increase this Islamophobia. It's not for us as Muslims to go overboard and not to be academic, as Allah has commanded us in the Quran to be fair and just. لا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على أن لا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى. Don't let a people's enmity towards you, their hatred towards you Muslims, don't allow it to make you to be oppressive, but be fair and just. This is closer to at-taqwa. So as it relates to this particular issue and all of the issues that you're going to ask me about in terms of clarifying my position, I want to answer the questions from that backdrop. Where do these accusations that they're saying that I made this statement or that statement fall into these categories? Is it the haq from the Kitab and the Sunnah? Is it something taken out of context? I actually said it, but it's out of context. Or is it an outright lie? So let us start from that point.
It's been said that you stated that women are deficient in their intellect. Are you not encouraging discrimination against women?
First of all, every Muslim, inshallah, who is studying his religion, he knows that this is an authentic hadith that Prophet Muhammad said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in describing the women's reality, that they are naqisat aqlin wa deen, that women are deficient in their intellect and they're deficient in their religion. The companions wanted to know, radiyallahu anhum, what is the meaning of this deficiency in their intellect? And what is this deficiency in their religion? So he explained to them, the deficiency in their intellect is that two women, when they have a witness or shahada in the court of law, it equals the one witness of a man. So that's her deficiency in her intellect. What is her deficiency in the deen? She is not able in most instances to fast the whole month of Ramadan due to her monthly cycle. She is not able in most instances to pray the whole month due to her monthly cycle. So as a result of that, there's a deficiency in her deen. So it doesn't mean that a woman is intellectually inept and below a man. It doesn't necessarily mean that. There's no man that I know of in this dunya today, no scholar of the religion of Islam or other than that, who was more intellectual, more educated, or more knowledgeable than Maryam, the mother of Isa ibn Maryam. No man has more taqwa than Maryam. No scholar today has more knowledge than our mother Aisha radiyallahu anha. She's a scholar of the deen. So, in explaining this hadith, I always tell the men of our community, we come from countries where we oppress women many times because of the culture. And we use hadith like this to oppress women. So even though I explained this hadith and what the hadith meant, I also explained that it's not permissible for a Muslim man to take this hadith to look at women as being second-class citizens, as not being able to understand. This is not the case. How many of us, when we drive as men, our wives tell us, go this way and go that way, especially when we go on long journeys. The husband, due to his arrogance, due to his stubbornness, he doesn't listen to his wife, and he winds up getting lost, the whole family. So we all know from personal experiences, our wives have knowledge about certain things. So this is not the case.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. It's also been alleged that you said that the laws of Islam are to be practiced and we should do away with all man-made laws. Are you saying then that Muslims should not follow UK law?
Again, this is a statement that was taken out of context. I didn't say it like that, first of all, but I did say on a number of occasions that as Muslims we have to strive to make Islam the religion that is being practiced in the four corners of the earth. That's why Allah Azza wa Jal sent all of the prophets and all of the messengers from Adam to Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we are followers of Rasulullah and his religion sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's our job to explain and to make clear what Islam is saying. So yes, it is a religious obligation that every Muslim has to try to spread the religion of Islam and make Islam the way of life for those people around him in his immediate vicinity and other than that. But never ever did I say that we cannot practice Islam in the British law. Never did I say that. As a matter of fact, I'm against that concept and that idea because the Prophet himself sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived in Mecca and Islam wasn't being practiced at the beginning, and he never told the Muslims we can't practice their law. The Kaaba had idols at it. He was still praying at the Kaaba. He was still doing those things that the non-Muslims of Quraysh of Mecca were doing that did not conflict with the religion of Islam. He went to Al-Medina where there were Jews and there were Christians there, and at the beginning of his stay in Al-Medina, he wasn't the one who was in control of the city, and he practiced the religion of Islam, and he lived in harmony at the beginning with those people who were around him. So that's a misquote.
Okay, thank you. You also said that no one loves the non-believers in the UK. Does that mean that if I had a non-Muslim neighbour that I should hate them?
Again, this is a statement that was taken out of context. And I would like to deal with this for a few minutes because it is multifaceted.
Okay.
As it relates to hating non-Muslims, it is the responsibility and the religious obligation for every Muslim to hate the disbelief of every non-Muslim. We hate the kufr and the disbelief of every non-Muslim. That is a religious obligation. And the Prophet told us, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam, whoever loves for Allah and hates for Allah, gives for Allah and refrains from giving from Allah for Allah, then his iman is complete. So Allah hates disbelief, therefore we have to hate disbelief. So we hate the disbelief of the non-Muslims. But hating the non-Muslim itself, I never said that, because the Prophet himself was told in the Quran, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. You, Ya Muhammad, cannot guide those who you love, but Allah guides those who He chooses. This ayat, by the ittifaq, unanimously is agreed by the scholars of Islam, was revealed because of the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who died as a non-Muslim. And the ayat said, you do not guide those who you love. So Rasulullah loved his grandfather, loved his uncle, loved relatives and his people who were not guided to Al-Islam by the nas of the Quran, in this particular ayah. Another thing is that Allah has mentioned to us in the Quran, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. Allah doesn't make it haram or prohibited for you Muslims as it relates to those people who do not fight you because of your religion, nor do they expel you out of your homes because of your religion. Allah doesn't prevent you from dealing with them kindly and justly. And Allah loves those who are just. So this ayat is clear. People are not fighting against us for our religion. It is a religious responsibility that the Muslims have to coexist with those people in order to call them to the good of Al-Islam. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You Muslims are the best people who have been brought forth for the betterment of mankind. How are we going to be the best people for mankind if we can't coexist with them? If we weren't into multiculturalism, how is it possible? It's not possible. In addition to that, Akhi, concerning this particular issue, My relatives are kuffar. The vast majority of my relatives are kuffar. Many times the revert Muslims, they want to know, is it permissible for me to love my mother, to love my father, to love my relatives? And I always tell them, it's from the fitrah, the natural disposition that Allah has created us with. This one likes mustard, that one likes ketchup. You can't help it. You can't help but to love your mother and your father who may happen to be non-Muslims. So Islam doesn't prevent that. Allah has allowed the Muslim man to marry the Christian girl, the Jewish girl. If he married his wife who gave him babies, more than likely he's going to love his non-Muslim wife who's a Jew or Christian. So I never said this because it's not consistent with the religion. As it relates to the last part of your question, dealing with your neighbor who's a non-Muslim, we had a class that we specifically talked about the haqq of the neighbor, the huquq of the neighbor, dealing with issues in our own community, telling the Muslims the importance of having good behavior with our neighbors in order to spread al-Islam and to eradicate many of the misunderstandings that non-Muslims have about us. And from what we discussed is the statement of Allah in Surah An-Nisa, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْجَارِ الْجُنُبِ. الْجَارِ الْجُنُبِ. Allah told the people, the Muslims, worship Allah and don't make any shirk with Allah. And be good to your parents. And be good to all of your relatives. And be good to the poor. And be good to those who are downtrodden. And be good to the neighbor who is the Dhil Qurba. Your neighbor who is a Muslim. Or the neighbor who is the Jar al-Junub. The scholars of Islam said the Jar al-Junub is the neighbor who's a non-Muslim. So the neighbor who is the Dhul Qurba can be the neighbor who is a Muslim, and the neighbor who is the Junub is the neighbor who's a non-Muslim. And some of them said that the neighbor who is the Dhul Qurba is the neighbor who is close to your house, and the other one is the one who is far away from your house. So we have an ayat in the Quran that some of the mufassirun of the Quran said that the ayat and the word, the Jar al-Junub, is the non-Muslim neighbor. So Allah is telling us to be diligent and to give them ihsan. So this is something that I believe in and I call to. And it is a misquote, and part of it has been taken out of context.
Okay, thank you. It has further been alleged that you said an imam has a right to crucify an individual and leave him on the cross for 3 days. Did you say that?
This again is a statement that I said, but again, it's been misconstrued. I didn't say an imam. I said the imam of the Islamic State. The imam, the leader of the Muslims, like the Muslim states that we have right now, whether it's Egypt, whether it's Sudan, whether it's Kuwait, whether it's Malaysia, whatever the Islamic State happens to be, the imam of that state, the leader of that state, he has the right to implement what Allah commanded in the Quran in Surah Al-Ma'idah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the imam how to deal with those people who murder people. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in the Quran, إِنَّمَا جَزَاءُ الَّذِينَ يُحَارِبُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَسْعَوْنَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا أَن يُقَتَّلُوا أَوْ يُسَلَّبُوا أَوْ تُقَطَّعَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَأَرْجُلُهُم مِّنْ خِلَافٍ أَوْ يُنفَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ ذَلِكَ لَهُمْ خِزْيٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَلَهُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. Verily the reward for those people who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and they spread mischief in the earth is that they should be killed, or they should be crucified, or their hands and feet should be cut off from opposite sides, or they should be expelled in the earth. This is their reward, their khiz. They're being put down in the dunya, and in the hereafter they're going to have a serious, grievous penalty. So I explained in the book Kitabul Kaba'ir to Al-Imam Al-Dhahabi, the book of major sins. And why did we choose this book? We chose it for a number of reasons. It's a book that talks about the aqidah that the Muslims need to understand. It's a book that talks about the knowledge of hadith. It's a book that talks about telling the Muslims how to be good citizens and stay away from major sins, like murdering people, major sins like drinking khamr, major sins or intoxicants like stealing, the major sin of revolting against the leader. It's a book that we're trying to teach the Muslims that's practical in our lives right here in this country. Al-Muhim, the Shahid, the point that I want to make concerning this is that in that class we made it perfectly clear, crystal clear, that it is up to the Imam to do what Allah said. He can either kill the murderer or he can crucify him. And I never mentioned anything about a cross. Isa ibn Maryam, our prophet, our Nabi of Al-Islam, who we believe in, who Prophet Muhammad told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِذَا جَاءَكُمْ Isa ibn Maryam فَبَلِّغُوهُ سَلَامِ. If Isa ibn Maryam comes, give him my salam. So we're waiting. If he's here, if we're here when he comes, we're going to tell him our prophet, our Nabi gave you salam. He's our Nabi. Al-Muhim, Isa ibn Maryam is going to come and break the cross. If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw something in the shape of a cross in his house, he used to break it. Now why is the Imam going to crucify someone on a cross? That in itself goes to show these people are adding words and concepts into people's statements. So the Imam has the right to do this or that or this. Those four things is left up to the Imam. And another thing I want to mention to you and anyone else who's listening, and those people know this very well, anytime I speak or I have spoken about the establishment of the hudud, the chopping off of the hands, killing people, anytime, I've always made it clear that executions and other than that, capital punishment, is only for the Imam in the Islamic State. It's not permissible. It's not permissible. As an Imam al-Hasan al-Basri said, it is for the Imam to establish the hudud. It is for the Imam to go after the one who is the criminal. It's not for you and I to go out as vigilantes to take the law into our own hand to look for those people who are the criminals. So I never said that. It's for the Imam of the Islamic State.
Okay, thank you. It has also been reported that you said we should throw homosexuals off a mountain. Does that mean you were encouraging the murder of homosexuals?
First of all, I was on a program here in the UK called, comes on in this Sunday morning, Heaven and Earth. And they wanted to know, what does Al-Islam say about the Muslim homosexual? I said to them, as I say now and as I said in my major sins class, Kitab al-Kaba'ir, from the major sins, homosexuality. Homosexuality is an abomination against Allah Almighty. And it is an abomination against mankind. One of the famous leaders of Al-Islam, he said, had it not been for the fact that Allah mentioned what the people of Lut, the people of Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah, what they did in the Quran, if it wasn't for those ayahs being in the Quran, he said, I wouldn't have never believed that a man would want to be with another man. It's not something that's natural. That's what I believe and that's what I stand on. As it relates to the homosexual, we said to the people in that program that's beamed out all across the UK, that if a Muslim man or woman happens to be a homosexual, then this is a major sin. But they're under the Mashiach of Allah. They're under Allah's decision. If Allah wants to punish them, He will. If He doesn't, He's up to Him. A Muslim will be forgiven for all of his sins with the exception of dying, being a polytheist, making shirk with Allah. So I've never said anything like that. In my major sins class, I explained to the people, and you could go back, and this is in the Kitab al-Kaba'ir. One of the Tabi'een asks the illustrious scholar and companion, Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiyallahu anhu, what should be the way in which the homosexual is killed? How should he be killed? Abdullah ibn Abbas made ijtihad. He said, there were no homosexuals during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so there was no had. There was nothing that he did to show us how he should be killed, stoned to death or anything. He said, but what I understand is, Rasulullah told us that Jibril, an angel, was sent to the people of Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah. That angel took his wing, put it in the land, and took their land and turned it upside down and squashed them, pulverized them, decimated them. In the morning, they were all gone. Abdullah bin Abbas said, since the earth was taken up and it was smashed upon them, I believe you should throw them off of a high place like a mountain. That's the ijtihad of Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiyallahu anhu. That's not the statement of Abu Usama. Al-Imam al-Dhahabi brought that statement in his book, and I explained. That's his ijtihad. But people don't throw homosexuals off of the building. Never ever did I say kill the homosexuals. I believe that homosexuals are committing a major sin, but they live in this country, and it's not for you, it's not for me, it's not for anyone else to take the law into their own hands to kill them or to do anything other than that. If someone asks me, marry two homosexuals, I'm going to say I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But will I smack a homosexual? Would I prevent him from his rights in terms of what doesn't go against my religion? No, that's not what I call to.
Okay, thank you. You also said that jihad was part of Islam. There is a huge lack of knowledge of what jihad means. Can you explain?
Yes, jihad is a part of al-Islam, and it's not permissible for any Muslim to reject al-jihad. But it is an institution that needs knowledge. It needs knowledge. We're living in a time which is the end of time. And one of the signs of the end of time is the fact that knowledge will be taken away from the people. Knowledge of the basics of the religion, like the aqidah. Who Allah is, where Allah isn't, where Allah is, what does Allah do, what does He not do. So there are simple basic issues of wudu, tahara, and salat that people don't know. Everyday issues that they don't know. The average Muslim doesn't know. You give a talk to a Muslim and you explain to him that you can wipe your head when you make wudu 3 times and do your ears 3 times. You can do that. The normal average Muslim who doesn't read, he says, I never heard that. I never knew that. You ask the average Muslim, show me how the Prophet prayed. He prayed 5 times every day in Medina in front of the people. All of those years. The companions have described to us in perfect detail his salah. The average Muslim is not praying according to the mechanics that have been given to us that describe his prayer. If that's the case with everyday issues, what about the issues like jihad? Most people don't know about the ahkam of al-jihad. Most people don't know about the ahkam of al-hajj, because it's not something that people are doing all the time, every day. So I say that the Muslims need to brush up on all aspects of the religion, especially these issues. And what I've said over and over and over again concerning the many lectures that I've given about jihad in order to shed light on the way we should understand it correctly, is that I always say, when it comes to issues about spilling blood and about people's money and about the private parts being made halal or haram, 3 things that happen in the jihad, then we have to be extra cautious as it relates to having knowledge of that issue. So concerning the jihad in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anyone who denies it or rejects it, he goes outside of the fold of al-Islam. There are too many ayahs that establish the jihad, which is the military campaign. But the jihad that we are talking about here is the jihad of making efforts and simply striving just to be a Muslim. The jihad of the everyday struggle. The jihad of getting up, living in this society, going to work, staying married, educating our children. The jihad of getting an education and so forth and so on. But I do not apologize, nor do I water down and make tamyir the military jihad. But that military jihad, it is of 2 types that we need to come to know about. The defensive jihad and the offensive jihad, and they both have their ahkam. I want to bring your attention to something. That is, we did a lecture called The Levels of Jihad According to Al-Imam Ibn al-Qayyim from his book Zad al-Ma'ad. That is a lecture against the so-called jihadi-oriented Muslims, the well-known ones in the world today, who declare jihad, and they don't have the right to declare jihad because they're not the leaders of Islamic states and they're not even scholars. We also did another lecture that was called Jihad and Terrorism. Are they synonymous? We sent these DVDs to the people at Hard Cash Productions. We sent these DVDs to those people, and more than likely they had them anyway because they were quoting us and misquoting us. So we just want to make it clear that we do not run away from the jihad in al-Islam, the military campaign, but what jihad? What jihad are we going to make during this time as Muslims in terms of the military campaign. And I believe that the people who are screaming jihad, jihad from the Muslims, meaning the military campaign, those people are actually cowards, because the reality of our situation, the reality, the weakness of the Muslim Ummah right now clearly shows us that those people have lost the plot. Prophet was in Mecca sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the ayat was revealed in the Quran, فَجَاهِدْ بِهِ جِهَادٍ كَبِيرًا. Make the big jihad with it. With it means with the Quran. With the Quran. While he was in Mecca, and his condition was a condition of weakness, his jihad was the jihad of spreading al-Islam and being patient. It wasn't the jihad of the sword. Even though the ayat was revealed, هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولُهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينَ الْحَقِّ لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْكَافِرُونَ. This ayat was revealed in Mecca. He is the one, Allah, who sent his messenger with the guidance and the religion of truth to declare it over all other religions. Even though the disbelievers may detest it. Rasulullah was reading that surah in Mecca sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this ayat. And yet he didn't have a military campaign for 13 years. The jihad that he performed in Mecca was the jihad of the lisan, calling the people to the religion. So, Al-Imam Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, another point that I've re-emphasized over and over again. This Imam of al-Islam, he told the Muslims, there's some wisdom in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being in Mecca for 13 years and then in Medina for 10 years. There's some wisdom in that. So the Muslims, whenever they find themselves at any time or any place, when their condition resembles the condition of Rasulullah in Mecca, then they should take on board and embrace the methodology of the Meccan period. And when they find their situation resembles his life in Medina, then they should take on board and embrace what he did in the methods of the Medina period. A person is in the Meccan period right now, but he's going to deal with the situation as if he's in the Medina period, is only going to bring fitna and fasad. So we're in the Meccan period right now. It's a period of weakness. So therefore, you have to make the jihad of explaining Islam, the jihad of the lisan.
So for those Muslims or non-Muslims who wish to know more about the true meaning of jihad, what authentic sources would or could you recommend?
The Quran, first and foremost, but in reading the Quran, he has to have someone who's going to explain to him what those verses are saying and meaning, because we have Muslims who have hijacked the ayats and verses of the Quran about jihad and misappropriated them and practiced them in the wrong way. But the Quran gives a crystal clear picture for the one who has basira and sincerity of what the jihad is, and the fact that there's no oppression in it, and the killing of innocents is diametrically opposed to al-Islam and the jihad of al-Islam. As it relates to an actual book in English about al-jihad, I'm not the one to ask that question, because I don't know too many books in English that talk about jihad. I don't know any book in English that comes to the mind that talks about jihad.
Can I thank you, Abu Usama, Imam of Green Lane Mosque, for speaking to us today. Assalamu alaikum.
Shukr lillah. Wassalamu alaikum.